In this course on defensive driving, you're going to learn important skills and techniques to help you become a better driver. Let's start with the name, defensive driving. In any sport, playing defense is important because it's something you can control. And every champion knows you can't win without a powerful defensive game. To lose a game is one thing, but every single day on our roads, around 100 people lose their lives. 100 people a day. 40,000 lives a year lost, when many of them could have been saved using the skills of defensive driving. Traffic fatalities are so common that we've become used to the headlines. They don't shock us anymore. But imagine what would happen if every day we turned on the news and heard that a plane crashed with 100 people on board. There'd be investigations held and changes made. People would demand solutions. The National Safety Council is working hard to become part of the solution to our tragic traffic death toll. One way we're doing this is to teach drivers, like you, about the essentials of becoming good defensive drivers. Because we all share the road every day with people who aren't just other drivers. They're fathers and mothers, children and friends and co-workers. People like you who love their lives and are loved and would be missed. That's why we say, and why we ask you to remember, at any moment, a choice you make can change your life forever.
Every year, tens of thousands of Americans die in motor vehicle collisions. In the latest reporting year, the figure was estimated at over 40,000 deaths. The great majority of crashes, especially those with fatalities and serious injuries, are caused by just 6 driving behaviors. We call these behaviors the 6 deadly choices. The 6 deadly choices are, in order of their statistical impact, speeding, violating the right-of-way, distracted driving, turning improperly, driving left of center, and following too closely. Each of these behaviors is a choice you as a driver can make or decide to avoid. In this video, we'll highlight the dangers of these choices, and later in the course, we'll provide techniques for avoiding them. Speeding is the #1 killer because it reduces the amount of time you as a driver have to react in a dangerous situation and increases your vehicle's stopping distance. Remember that speeding doesn't just mean exceeding the speed limit. It can also mean driving too fast for existing conditions. Violating the right-of-way is the second most common driver error. You violate the right-of-way when you fail to yield to or when you disregard a stoplight, sign, or signal. There are many different kinds of distractions that can affect our driving. Recent studies suggest that about 30% of drivers are distracted at any given time. Drivers experience 3 types of distractions. A manual distraction can cause you to take your hands off the wheel. A visual distraction can cause you to take your eyes off the road. A cognitive distraction can cause you to take your mind off the road. Distracted driving reduces our ability to respond to changing conditions, which can have deadly results. Turning improperly and using the wrong lane are interconnected deadly choices. Turning improperly can lead to angle collisions, where the front of one vehicle hits the side of another vehicle, like in a T-bone collision, and can also lead to sideswipe crashes. Both of these are among the leading causes of injuries and fatalities on our roads. When you drive left of center, as you do when passing another vehicle, you put yourself at risk of the most fatal type of collision, the head-on collision. Following too closely is the leading cause of rear-end collisions, and these lead to more injuries than any other type of crash. These are the 6 deadly choices that increase your chances of a fatal collision. Remember, every behavior is a choice. Not one of the over 100 people who pull out of their driveways every morning thinks, "Today, I'm going to be a car crash fatality statistic." But that is in fact the reality for over 40,000 Americans each year. These traffic deaths are a tragedy, and the toll on the families involved is truly incalculable. This is Tom Geltz and family. On February 29, 2016, Tom and his wife Wendy were waiting for their daughter Megan to come over after work. The mother of a young daughter, Megan was 13 weeks pregnant with her second child, a son. The phone rang. Wendy answered.
It ended up being Regions Hospital in St. Paul, Minnesota. They told her that Megan had been in a car crash and we needed to get to the hospital immediately. I got mad. I figured that kid wasn't a good driver herself. She was 22 years old and she probably totaled my car, and I was going to wring her neck when I got to see her.
Megan had been on her way home, stopped at a stop sign wearing her seatbelt, when a car lost control, crossed the center lane into oncoming traffic, hit the shoulder, rolled through a ditch, and came up on an embankment where it went airborne and sheared off the top of Megan's car.
They asked if we wanted to see her. We had to identify the body, and so they brought her into the room. I touched her hand, and it was still warm. And we prayed and we cried and we talked to her, and when they took her out of the room, I touched her hand again, and it was cold, and I knew she was never coming back. At that point, I knew as a safety consultant I had to do something about vehicle safety and traffic crashes.
The accident report stated that the other driver admitted to driving distracted. The police conducted an alcohol test, but ordered no other toxicology tests. And although hospital tests later that same day revealed that the driver was impaired on illegal drugs, this information was not admissible in court because the tests had not been ordered in the field.
The man who killed my daughter walked away from the crash scene. He was taken into custody for a brief period of time and released on his own recognizance, and he's out and about driving around amongst all of you right now. And as you drive around, you can see thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people driving around just like that, distracted. They're everywhere. And you have to pay attention. You have to pay attention because you have to avoid these people. Now we have a cross that sits at that intersection. Our friends say it looks nice. There's flowers there and pictures there. How many crosses are there across the United States that we see on our roads, on our interstates and our highways? We see them all over the place. I never really gave them much thought before. Now, everyone that I go by, I say a little prayer for that person because, people died there. Don't let this be you.
When you're in the driver's seat, the safety of passengers is one of the most important responsibilities that you have on the road. You hold their lives in your hands. So let's take a quick look at what happens to passengers in the case of a crash. Each crash goes through 3 stages. There's the vehicle crash itself, then inside the car, there's the impact to passengers as they hit the steering wheel or dashboard or each other and collide with their own seatbelts and airbags. And finally, we see the 3rd stage of the crash, the interior impact of the organs in the human body as they hit other organs or the skeleton. The most important practical way to help keep your passengers safe is to make sure everyone in your vehicle is safely fastened into a seatbelt, approved child safety seat, or proper safety restraint. This includes your pets too, don't forget. We know from statistics on collisions and fatalities in the U.S. that seatbelts save lives. The risk to passenger car occupants gets reduced by 45% with proper seatbelt use. And there's also a 50% reduced risk of moderate to critical injury. So how do seatbelts protect us? The seatbelt system is anchored to the vehicle in 3 places, depending on its design, that allow the occupant's forward movement to be slowed and stopped as the vehicle stops its own forward motion. Each seatbelt works via a mechanism that consists of a spring and a spool. These keep the belt snug around the chest and pelvis. plus a locking mechanism that gets triggered when a car slows or makes a fast stop, as would happen during a crash. The seatbelt holds the passenger in place. This is what happens in a crash situation to a passenger who is not wearing a seatbelt. Without protection, the body keeps moving forward, powered by kinetic energy, until it crashes inside the vehicle. That's why the seatbelt is your first line of defense when it comes to your responsibility as a driver for occupant safety.
You know that great feeling you get sometimes when it's like you own the road? Yeah, I know, that almost never happens. Almost all the time, we're sharing the road with other vehicles, semis and buses, motorcycles and bikes, and pedestrians. It's a big list. And as drivers, we need to keep aware and alert about every single one of those other road users every day. It can be a challenge. We're going to take an overview of the key techniques that will help you deal with the challenges of sharing the road. Let's start with the challenge of sharing the road with larger vehicles. As drivers, we know instinctively that it's a bit harder to share the road with vehicles that tower over our own. They're their own kind of hazard, and we can be a hazard to them as well if we're not alert. Here are 3 key things to remember in order to keep yourself safe on the road with larger vehicles. Larger vehicles have bigger blind spots, so it's harder for them to see any smaller vehicles around them. Larger vehicles need more space to make a turn. For example, we've all seen trucks have difficulty in tight turns. And perhaps most importantly, the larger the vehicle, the longer it takes to stop. Next, there are strict rules when it comes to sharing the road with a school bus. You always slow down when you approach a school bus from any direction on most roadways. But if you're on a multi-lane divided roadway, this rule only applies to vehicles traveling in the same direction as the bus. If the bus is flashing amber lights, it's about to stop, so use caution. If the bus is flashing red lights and the stop arm is extended, you must come to a complete stop too. And remember, it is illegal almost everywhere to pass a school bus on a 2-lane road with an extended arm sign. That means kids are getting on or off the bus, so use extra caution. Sharing the road with an emergency vehicle is another kind of challenge. The minute you hear that siren, your job is to get out of the way, legally, safely, and quickly. These laws may vary by state, but in general, when there's an ambulance coming, for example, you slow down, signal, then move to the right shoulder of the road and, if possible, come to a stop while the vehicle passes. The move over law applies to stopped emergency vehicles and requires drivers to move over and give them safe clearance. The law states that you must reduce your speed by 20 miles below the posted speed limit, but not slower than 20 miles per hour. Then, move your vehicle to an unoccupied lane, to your left or right. Normally, you must move right to yield to a responding emergency vehicle. However, the move over law states that in the case of a stopped emergency vehicle, you may be required to move left or right, depending on where the stopped response unit is parked. Finally, let's talk about sharing the road with motorcycle riders, cyclists, pedestrians, and other vulnerable road users. The key word here is courtesy. Give motorcycles and bicycles room, always. Don't crowd them from behind, and give them space when passing. Only in a serious emergency should you sound your horn at cyclists or pedestrians. Remember that they might get startled, and you'll end up with a preventable crash on your hands. Be alert for crosswalks and any place you see children. People cross in the middle of the block all the time, and it's your job as a driver to protect them. All these rules and techniques will help you be a safer driver. And the one thing they have in common is paying attention, being alert, respectful, and responsible at the wheel, and aware of your surroundings solves almost every problem you encounter when sharing the road.